All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the endorsement of Ron DeSantis by Thomas Massie, actually. Massie, a relatively well-known and well-liked legislator. I've got no real qualms with him. He was on the forefront of anti-lockdownerism, so for that, he gets some points, in my opinion. He's a contemporary of people that are like Rand Paul and some of the others. He leans more towards the libertarian side of politics. Not as much as Rand does, but he's close enough. He's a tolerably good member of the legislature at a time when there aren't that many tolerably good members of the legislature. So I do actually give some respect to Thomas Massie, and of course, as a preemptive here. I always have to remind people of this. With the Trump v. DeSantis thing, whenever you wade into any issue that involves either of them, people will start dogpiling you as though you're Cult 45, you're driving with DeSantis and you're brain dead and stuff like that. I have no problem with DeSantis either. Again, while I prefer Trump and I will be voting for him, and I see the indictment circus going on right now and say I'd be a fool not to, DeSantis has the right to run for the same position in the 24 primaries if he wants to. Massie has the right to endorse whoever he wants. And DeSantis hasn't done anything in particular that rubs me the wrong way. Again, there are some Floridian policies that deviate from what I believe in, but again, when you're talking about politics, you're talking about people. If you're ranking them 1 out of 10 and you find yourself ranking somebody a 10, that's probably when you should rethink your estimation of them. And your estimation of yourself as potentially nakedly partisan. There were people that thought that George W. was a great guy. Well, there were plenty of people who thought the same about Obama, too. Anyway, here's my read on this. Ron DeSantis has not yet actually announced a presidential bid. This could indicate one of several things. Number one, DeSantis does plan to run, and Massie is aware of this, and so he's saying, well, I'm going to be driving with DeSantis because I prefer him over Trump or any of the others in the field. Of course, a field that, if DeSantis doesn't run, will quickly fill up with other people like Chris Christie. I have a feeling that DeSantis leans towards running, so I think that that's a long shot, and Chris Christie will never be the president of the United States, but it would be funny to see him try. I honestly hope DeSantis gets in and Christie's crazy enough to get in anyway, just so that he can be a chucklehead on stage. Maybe he'll have another Marco Robato meltdown moment, and he'll prove himself useful again. He'll probably try to do that to Trump if he's on a debate stage with him. That would be one for the goddamn legend books. Anyway, the other possibility is that this is Massie's way of trying to get DeSantis to run. Because of course he hasn't announced yet, maybe Massie doesn't have inside knowledge, and he's like, well, I would like to see that, for whatever reason. He genuinely likes him. Maybe he's starting to suffer some TDS and he just wants Trump to be embattled. Maybe he took a fall, he took a bribe, and this is the Dems paying Thomas Massie. This is a long shot. I don't think that they can bribe Thomas Massie. Ideologically, again, he's been fairly consistent, so I'm not going to assume that. Maybe there's some shenanigans of some sort. Link in the description, archived of course, talking about this. Does Massie's endorsement matter? Yes, to a degree. It would be entirely countered if Rand Paul were to come out and endorse Trump. Again, you've got a very small nexus of people that fit in with that sort of generally more libertarian ethos within the Senate and the House, and a few governors, maybe a Kristi Noem or something, who might get in herself. We have to wait and see. A relatively small number of people that I think, and this is why I want Rand to run for the presidency, that represent a fairly large core bloc. It overlaps with MAGA to the greatest extent, but it is also semi-separate. A lot of it is people who remember like the Ron Paul Revolution stuff. Disproportionately, a lot of millennials like Rand Paul as well, and that would entirely counter it. Because you're going to find a significant overlap between the fan bases of both of these people. Rand, I think, is the one with a little bit more political clout overall. Also had a competent run for the presidency. Actually was not just an also ran until Trump got in and basically stole the show. That was 2016. So I don't see this moving the metric really right now, especially because DeSantis isn't in the race. And I don't have any problem with it. Again, I'll preface it by saying I do not find this problematic. I have my preference. I wear that on my sleeve. DeSantis, if he wins in a fair primary, would be palatable. At this point, though, because of the indictment circus and the endangering of our republic, which is literally what it is, by an out-of-control Manhattan DA, a partisan judge with other partisan leanings through his daughter, etc., looking at the system throwing out almost 2.5 centuries of legal and civic precedent for political purposes because Orange Man bad and they're afraid of him, it would be very difficult for me to envision any scenario I don't vote for Trump anyway, even if he weren't the primary contender, even if he doesn't win the Republican primaries, where I will vote for him, by the way, possibly be via absentee, I suppose. I'll vote for Donald Trump because I can't imagine that the entire system that I know to be corrupt in every way, shape, and form, bankers, legacy media, big tech moguls, the war complex, all of these things seem to hate Trump. Some of them don't seem to have a problem with Desantis, although he is starting to take more and more flack as they expect him to get closer and closer to running. Massie has endorsed him. Good for him. I don't see it really moving the metric right now. You've only had a handful of people endorse anyone who's in the race. The person being endorsed isn't actually in the race at all. DeSantis might decide, and I think it would be wise, to stand down. I don't have a problem with him getting in. The main problem is that DeSantis down the line at some point could be a very viable contender and a very powerful candidate. If he blows his load early and he goes up against someone with a 20-25 point advantage, he probably doesn't win. MAGA begins to abandon him in any further political bid. You won't see DeSantis crush the competition by 20 points because a lot of those people might stay home. Trump could even decide to throw him under the bus and effectively command him to do so. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. Donald Trump has been known to put the squeeze on his fellow Republicans from time to time. By the way, something that the we must win at all costs people see as a vice, but people like myself who aren't Republicans at all see as a big virtue. So there's a little bit of analysis of that. It could move if DeSantis does run. His endorsement certainly matters, although it is possibly going to be countermanded. Rand Paul has been a fairly staunch ally of Donald Trump. He's not afraid to say, well, I don't agree with this particular issue, but at the end of the day, he hasn't gone Pence mode. he didn't get his 50 pieces of silver or something, I suppose, to use a term that is bleeding into the lamestream right now, and largely being astroturfed, by the way, by liberals. When you see memes of Donald Trump associated with Jesus or something, a lot of that, some of it's just troll hyperbole, and some of it genuinely is people who have a little bit of a cult-like mentality about Donald at this point. But many of them, liberal astroturfers. I think that trying to portray Trump as being involved with a sort of quasi-religious cult like a Jim Jones thing and being worshipped by his fans is the new strategy of the left. We'll see how far that works. It might backfire. It might end up becoming a sort of self-fulfilling mimetic prophecy or something like that at some point. I still consider DeSantis, assuming he gets in, as a massive underdog against Donald Trump. Again, there's one central reason that I've harped on now for well over a year, and I never hear anyone else discussing it, which is that as the quasi-incumbent, Donald Trump can simply go to the party leaders at the state level and say, look, number one, I'm going to win. I'm 25 fucking points ahead, the writing's on the wall. Number two, you know that you like me and I've got your back. Just suspend the primary in your state. I'm the technical incumbent. Make me Grover Cleveland 2.0. Some states will be amenable to that. Doesn't even matter if it's only a handful of rural states that Trump carried by 30 points or something. That takes a lot of the potential delegates for anyone else off the table before the primary even really starts. So we'll see what happens with that as well. That is the wild card ultimately in the Republican primaries. Even more so than, hey, does Donald Trump have to campaign under house arrest? I think his popularity would rise among independent voters at that point. Still waiting on Georgia and some of these other litigations against Donald Trump for everything under the sun. Because Orange Man bad. I find it interesting still. Normally when we're talking about anyone else in the race, it's framed against Donald Trump. And I've noticed that even fans of DeSantis typically Trump is mentioned more often than Ron is. Don somehow is more popular even in their own discourse than Ron is. I've noticed that as well. I'm just throwing that out there. That's about all. Peace out.